then I had kids.
Yeah,
And
well,
then I started
that's-
coaching soccer, and
that's
softball,
the
baseball,
thing.
and it was over.
It's crazy amongst me. My husband hasn't opened up his boat since, like, I think he's opened it up maybe twice since my son has been born, and it's just sitting there.
I tell you, how does someone is good at bass fishing? It seems like complete random luck. Which I
No.
There is an element of luck, because you never know what size you're gonna get on, but people with good skills get on size bet more often.
Alex,
And
good
so,
morning.
when you see certain people winning all the time,
Yeah.
there's a skill, right?
No, I'm sure,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
no, explain to me what the skill is.
The skill is, in bass fishing, is presentation. How you throw, those guys, they can throw a bait right here, and they will skip it. It'll hit the water here, and it'll skip all the way to
You
that
have to
wall.
make the lure like.
Yeah, so they actually will throw baits, and they'll skip them under the boats and the docks all the way back, and they drop right where the fish are, but everybody else is casting, normal
That's
fishermen
interesting.
splashing over here, you cast and you let it splash. No, everything they throw just sets in the water, it sounds like a frog just went under it, it didn't splash like a rock.
I see.
That's a simple part
So
of it.
that's,
Yeah.
that's a big part of it.
And then knowing what to use.
Yeah.
What's funny is that I fished like crazy. I was 19 years old, and I bought, this is 1987, and I bought a $20,000 bass boat. Back then, that's like a $60,000,
That's actually
That was
like-
like crazy. I had to hit like
Yeah.
5 banks before
Oh my
they'd give me a loan. Bought that boat, and I probably fished 4 days a week. That's after work every day. I was on the water.
Yeah, I believe it, I believe it. And we have a boat, like a boat, house we have a beach as well, but it's a trek. We have like 2 acres, and it's all, we're right next to Mount Naftai. We're on, in Buckingham, like on the peninsula, and so our property goes like this, down to the water, we have one flat spot for our house, and it just keeps going, so the trek down is.
How close is that to the Narrows?
We are,
Of the lake?
why don't we begin to kick off here?
Oh, really? That's a good fishing spot.
I think
some really good bass in this.
I know, bass fishing is interesting.
Man, I was just getting up to I'm just gonna start talking about buzz baits.
I know,
I like
story,
to bass fish,
but-
so, you know.
but we have a champion bass fisher right here, so that is something to get some lessons.
Used to
But-
be rusty.
But, welcome everybody. I am really excited about today's morning session with Per. I saw Per speak down in San Diego, and the topic of pricing is one that most CEOs and owners kind of treat as a third rail. It is a tough lever to really master, but it is one of the most important ones. So that's gonna be our focus this morning. And I won't steal any more of Per's thunder. I actually cannot. But we are, as you can see, we're down today. Dasha and Chance, Janet riding around the French countryside are not here this morning, so we will be an intimate group, and we've been that way before. But nonetheless, what we're going to do today, first, thank you, Alyssa, hosting us this morning, and we're going to do a host presentation. So the agenda this morning will be, we're going to spend some time with Per. We will take a break. We'll move into the host presentation. We'll decide if we want to have a working lunch, see how we feel, and then go into the afternoon session with check-in and so forth. All right, sounds like a plan. Per?
Yes,
Let me turn it over to you.
thank you very much, and thank you very much, Andrew, for inviting me here. I'm excited to be here and to meet you all, and we're going to talk about pricing. And Vistage want me to show this slide to summarize what we're going to talk about, and it's about how you set your pricing strategy, what data you should use, and strategy and tactics that you guys can actually imply sometimes already today, right? To increase your customers' willingness to pay and therefore support more profitable prices. So what I will talk about today, and this is a summary of a full day seminar. So there's lots of things in that full day seminar that I'm not going to cover. It's all in that book, by the way, though. Talk about the paradox of price. Because if you price right, you can increase sales, you can increase profits, you can increase customer satisfaction, all at the same time. Something most companies want, right? I'm not going to talk about your business process, not very much. I am going to talk about the importance of using data for pricing and how you can use pricing as a profit lever. I'm also going to spend a lot of time talking about the fact that everything you do in your company affects your ability to price. Because it does, right? And I'm going to talk about the psychology of pricing, the importance of measure what your customers are actually willing to pay, which is different from what they tell you. I'm going to talk about mistakes. You know them, so you can avoid them. Tactical pricing actions, like I said, which are stuff that you can imply or use already today or maybe tomorrow. I'm also going to talk about strategic pricing actions, which are more long-term, but is aimed at taking your company to the next level. Does that sound like a plan?
Sure.
All right. So just a little bit of background. There's very, very few people, less than a handful of people with my experience. And I've been covered in media quite a bit. These front pages and so forth. And I have this book that you can take a look at. I don't give away that book, by the way. Why don't I give it away?
Low value.
Exactly, right. You probably have speakers that come here, they all give you books and it goes into a shelf and is never touched again, right? I've done business all over the world, in more than 40 countries. I've run a whole slew of companies. I'm on a couple of boards. So what I'm going to talk about is based on actual business experience, plus behavioral science, plus proven practice and process, right? So nothing in this presentation has been proven not to work, right? That doesn't mean that everything works for every company in every circumstance, but all the things I'm going to talk about is proven to work, right? So if you start by some of the giants that I'm leaning on or standing on the shoulders of, starting with behavioral economics. These are 3 Nobel Prize winners. And behavioral economics is all about how real people make buying decisions, whether it's in B2B or whether it's in B2C. So we're going to start. And the basics here is to price right. You need to have a better understanding of the market's willingness to pay. And that means that you can price for profit. Profits are good, right? And that gives you more resource to drive your company forward, more resource for market development, more resource to target the right customers, more resource to create a better product or service to market fit, and more efficient marketing and sales. But there's also, of course, changes. Every market change every time. Now, the last couple of years, we've had more changes than maybe anybody want to see, right? What have you seen in your various companies or from your various markets? What has changed?
Well, recently we have a lot of clients putting us on a budget, whereas previously it was just meet the need.
Mm-hmm. So they become more price sensitive.
I deal with tariffs, so that changed.
So your cost goes up.
My cost goes up.
Yeah. Anything
Money's
else?
tighter for us, we do a lot of work with, public entities, and the money's just not there and the investment's not there, like there's not any government investment, so, things have become very commoditized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, only when I have a need, and only the lowest cost provider.
Yeah. So, always changes. Another hero, of course, is this guy. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. And when your price match the customer's value perceptions, your prices are optimized, right? That's where you want to be. But then you can also affect those value perceptions so they are increasing. And I'm going to talk about that also quite a lot. And if you can have your customers' value perceptions increase, you can charge higher prices. And they will be happier too. And this is hard work, but it's really worth it. And in the title of this talk is a holistic approach to pricing power. And Warren Buffett also coined the term pricing power, where he said that the single important criterion to invest in a company is whether they have pricing power or not. And then he continued to say, pricing power is the ability to raise prices and not lose sales volume. Right? Another gentleman that is somebody to follow or read his books, he's been dead now for 15 years, is that Peter Drucker, the founder of modern management, he said, customers rarely buy what companies think they are selling them. And then he actually continued there saying that customers are not buying a 1/4-inch drill, they are buying a 1/4-inch hole, right? So it's the outcome that drives value perceptions. But I'm also going to use a lot of examples in this presentation. They are very unlikely to be in your specific business. And so what I want you to do as I go through these examples is I want you to think about how can this be applied to my company, right? What do I learn from this that could be applied to my company? Sometimes the answer is no. Many times the answer is there is a way. Okay, so let's talk about profits. In my experience, CEOs does not wake up every morning thinking about how can I be more profitable. They think maybe of revenue, more customers, not profits. And but profits, of course, is what drives every company. If there's no profit, eventually there is no company. Investors, even yourself, if you are one of the investors, will get tired of supporting the company. So the company dies, or gets sold, or gets closed down. And profit comes from the highest level only from 3 variables. It is the total cost of the operation, it is the total sales volume of whatever you sell, and it is the price of what you sell. Very simple. Not something everybody think about every year, right? Every day. And of those, pricing has the highest leverage of profits. And if we do a thought experiment and we say, let's take these 3 variables and we change them a single %, what will happen for the average company's profits? Well, we find that if they can increase sales volume 1%, profit goes up 3.5%. If you can reduce cost with 1%, profit goes up 5.5%. But if you can increase your price with 1%, profits goes up 11.3%. This is for the average company. No company is average. So what I did was that I went online, I found 4 fairly small public companies, and I did this calculation. And I found that out of those 4, 3 of them, a 1% price increase would lead to between 16 and 21% increase in profits. Right? Pricing has the highest leverage. Now, what do you think will happen if you discount another 5%? Easy to say, your marketing say, oh, we need coupons, give another 5% away. Your sales people say, customers are complaining, we're too expensive. We need to discount another 5%. What do you think happens with profits?
I'm hoping it's not the same leverage the other way.
Probably is.
It is the same leverage the other way. So for the average company, if you discount another 5%, you lose more than half your profits. Right? And in fact, there is we did a calculator for this. So you can, and I can share that calculator. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's also on our website. So you can do this for your own company. Okay? And I've created something I call the 1% challenge. Can you guess what that is?
Increase price by 1%.
Sorry?
Increase your price by 1%.
Exactly, and it's more than that. It's, have you actually failed to change something 1%? Have you?
I don't understand that question. Have you ever failed to change anything by 1%?
If you, if we just mentioned that 1% for the average company, 1% increase in price leads to 11.3% increase in profits. And I'm asking, have you ever failed to change anything, a single percent?
Anything at all,
Anything at all?
by 1%.
Of course.
Of course, but
Yeah, exactly, it's tiny. You haven't done it, right? So when you start thinking about this, think about 5% or 10%, right? And what that will do for your company, right? More product, services, more market development, increased competitiveness, and so forth. Now, in your company, do you track revenue or profits?
Both.
Both? On what level? Only top level, or by profits by maybe business units or product line, or?
we do it by product line and by project.
Mm-hmm.
We track revenue channel. We track revenue by revenue channel,
Mm-hmm.
and then profit as a whole.
You should probably do profits by channels as well, right?
We don't. We try and yeah.
Because that's where you can see where the highest leverage come from. Right. So profit should be, you should really track profits on a detailed level. Right. Because again, then you know where you can do those tiny changes, right?
So just to pause if I can, Per. So around the room, if you are tracking, and thank you, Jonathan and Beth. So for the rest, what level of profits are you tracking?
What do
Just
you mean
at
by
the high
tracking?
level?
What do you mean by tracking? The ability to look at it,
The
or something
ability-
you're checking in regularly?
The ability to track by product line, or by channel, or by customer type.
Or by salesperson.
We are now, this
You-
year,
You are now,
this year,
so,
but 8 years in, we just started.
Okay,
tracking. Where's the
yeah.
profit coming from?
yeah.
But I mean, the good news is that then you'll have data to know where to tweak.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do ours by project, each individual project profitability. And actually, after your presentation, I actually learned that we're refining that even more into types of projects, size of projects.
Yep.
And we're starting to break it down so we can start seeing where our profitable lines are higher, so we can, because we're always flowing with the market. We change with the market. I wanna change in the right direction by finding where I'm making the most money.
And I'm gonna prove to you that there is no market price, right?
I'm each one of my products or services, by profit, but I don't, there's no like overhead factored into that, so I don't really have a real concept of profit.
Yeah. Tracking, allocating,
It's all direct.
is very difficult, right? So, but you should at least try, but otherwise it could be gross profit. All right, but pricing doesn't live in a vacuum, right? And I've already said that everything you do in your company affects your ability to price. And that's because all buying decisions are emotional, even in B2B. And the buying decision is done back here in the limbic system, and then because we're supposed to be smart people, we put rationale on top of that decision that is already made. To understand the need to take a holistic approach, because everything affects your ability to price. I'm using this joisting horse with its knight. And if you think about it, think about the horse itself as your product or service. The knight as marketing, who steers the horse, who encourages the horse. The lance as sales, who needs to stretch and come as far into the customer community as possible. And then price is the tip of the lance, which means that all of this need to work together for this horse and the knight to be successful. And if, for example, the horse have no legs, this is not going to be very successful. Right? Or if the knight steers the horse the wrong way around. Or if the lance is only a foot long, or if there's no tip on the lance. So everything in your company needs to work together to gain pricing power. Another way of looking at this is this. You have two companies here. They are in a price war with a commodity product and have no customers. Whereas this company knows what the market wants, have all the customers, and can charge higher prices. So knowing the market, knowing willingness to pay, knowing what drives willingness to pay upwards is the key to gain pricing power. And companies think they know, but they don't. Most companies don't. 88% of American companies leave money on the table. Right? And that's because when companies talk to their customers or their prospects, they lie. Right? Not everybody lies, but almost everybody withhold information they think will be beneficial to you. So, to illustrate this, I'm using this story of, imagine that you're on the car dealer lot. They have the car you want. You discover they also have the color you want. Are you going to say to the salesman, oh, I see you have the color. This is my favorite color, so I'll pay you another $2 grand. Is anybody of you going to say that? No. What you're going to say is that, oh, I see you got my favorite color, so if you knock another $1,000 off the car, I'll buy it. And the salesman go in and talk to the sales manager saying, we need to lower our prices. Because customers lie. Right? And this leads to a skewed perception of the reality. If it's very skewed, the company goes out of business. If it's very right, they become the market leader with pricing power. If it's like most companies, it's sort of halfway right. And they stay in business, they could do better, but they're not the market leaders. But there's psychology to pricing.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you explain this again? So, customer lens, and how does that impact me?
It impacts you because if you believe what they all say, you are underpricing yourself.
You know, they say that I don't have money,
Okay.
like, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Okay.
That's the bottom line. So let's talk about pricing psychology, and the first thing we're gonna talk about is something called expectation bias. Expectation bias is something we all have. I have it, all of you have it, and most importantly, all your customers and prospects have it. What it means is that if we are being presented with a price of something we want to buy that we find is a little too low, we equate that with low quality or low benefit. We've all been there, right? We hold something in our hands, physically or metaphysically, and we say to ourselves, I kind of want to buy this, but at this low price, I won't. That happened to your customer. You don't, many times you don't know, why did this prospect go away? In some cases, it is because the price was too low. It's been proven, for example, that a 5-cent painkiller is not very effective. But a 50-cent painkiller, the same painkiller, is a lot more effective. I mean, you can buy generic aspirin for almost nothing. You can buy Bayer aspirin for 5 times the price. And there's some people out there saying, I tried the generic, it didn't work, but this Bayer is really good. And it's the same stuff. So it's the placebo effect applied to pricing. And in fact, what they have done at one point is that they put people in functional MRI machines and they gave them wine. And what they found was that if they give them cheap wine said to be expensive, the pleasure centers in the brain lit up. If they gave them cheap wine and said it's cheap, not so much. And the opposite is also true. If they gave them expensive wine that said to be expensive, pleasure center went up. But if it said to be cheap, not so much. So these are real emotions that we experience when we are presented with a price. In this case, it was either a $6 bottle of wine or a $60 bottle of wine. So, and
See that experiment on my wife, I think it'd be like threefold.
yeah. And I have a personal story. I have a few more of these, but I was in Vegas. This is many years ago. I was in Vegas. I needed a haircut before I went to the convention center, and I passed this sign saying $9 haircut. And I passed it because it sends to me a message of inferior quality. So does an $11.99 haircut. And I eventually paid $20, or which is what I sort of expected to pay at the time for a haircut. But I obviously don't know whether that $9 haircut was any good, any better or worse than the $20, but the risk was too high. So not to take the risk, I was willing to pay, the extra $11, but I mean, I could have been wrong. I mean, it could have been the opposite. Who knew, right? In the end, I think I made the right choice.
Just a question on that. So in this example here, do you feel that people maybe tend to, you know, go for the better haircut price, or the more higher price haircut rather than this lower price haircut because of their past experiences? Like they've paid a cheap price for something and they were disappointed,
Yes.
and then they go.
I mean, there's two answers. There's two answers. I mean, there's a certain category of people who only can afford $9.
Yeah.
And what the result is, they don't care, but they can only afford $9. There are other people who may have tried $9 and it ended up awful. And then there are people like me who said that $9 haircut cannot possibly be any good, so I won't buy it.
Yeah, I guess my thought here is, we often in our house will say, well, you get what you pay for.
Actually, you get what you pay for. That was coined by a guy called Torsten Veblen back in 1898. He called it the common law of business balance. Right. So
But by your theory is wrong.
I'm sorry?
But by your theory is wrong.
But your perception is you're right, though.
Sure,
Yeah.
you don't pay, you don't, wait, what was it?
You get what you pay for.
You
get what
get
you pay
what you pay for.
Yeah.
It's not true.
No, but in some cases it is your perception that you get
Yeah.
what you pay for, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, at one point I had a conversation with the CEO of one of the dollar stores, and he said, because we are so cheap, we have to sell high quality stuff, because otherwise customers won't come back.
I was gonna ask you that, is it,
Interesting.
like a haircut is a recurring purchase,
Yeah,
and then there's one-time purchases.
yes,
And I remember hearing a guy say that we're too poor to buy cheap crap because they need it to last.
Yes.
So they'll go big ticket items on one-time purchases, but recurring purchases is like an expense, a
Yes.
daily overhead expense. Does that try and drive the prices differently?
yes, it does. It does. I mean, that's actually a very good point. Very good point.
Buy once, cry once.
Yeah. Because a recurring
It's really
purchase, you have
expensive.
bad experiences, you have something to measure it by. If you're buying a washer and dryer one time, hopefully you don't have to do it again,
Right,
right? If you
right.
buy cheap crap, you will maybe.
Yep. So, price can be too low, it obviously can be too high. But like, these are two watches that are equally good telling the time. But the one to the left is not affordable to many people, and they buy it for other reasons than telling the time. Same with cars, right? The one to the left is too expensive for many people, but it's not sold or not bought to go from A to B. There are other reasons for buying it. And it is understanding those reasons that gives you pricing power. So pricing is a balance act, and not too low, not too high. And 81% of buyers say they buy the best value, not the cheapest price. And the best value comes from a lot of things, right? I'm gonna shut up here for a second so you can read this. So this is all you need to know to gain pricing power, right? We talked about this already a little bit. We all bought stuff that we thought was too cheap.
Per, could you go back a slide for a second? For to your list? Yeah. In your experience, and maybe you're gonna talk about this, do companies not fully leverage the soft side or the hard side, or is it a mix?
They think it is all about the hard side.
They think about the hard side, not the soft side.
No.
That's the
Very,
opportunity.
very few companies think about the soft side.
So that's the opportunity?
Yeah. You know, or they don't think about it enough, I should say. Right. You're gonna get a copy of this presentation.
Awesome.
All right, and I'm also recording it, so there's gonna be a video, so, actually 2 videos. We already talked about this, that we sometimes buy stuff that is too cheap. And another personal story, I love my hummingbirds, right? When I bought my house, I'm still in the same house 30 years later, I bought some hummingbirds feeders from China, right? They worked really well, but I needed more of them, so I bought some slightly cheaper hummingbird feeders, you know, from Amazon somewhere, and they showed up, 3 of them, 4 of them, and they physically disintegrated within 6 months. I mean, how can you manufacture something so simple as a hummingbird feeder that is so poor quality that it just physically disintegrates? Just fell apart. Unbelievable. Right? Those that I bought the first time, now almost 30 years ago, I'm still using them. Right? Anyway, we need data to do all this in a proper way. Right? And my favorite Peter Drucker came again and said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So what are you going to manage here? Are you going to manage your prices? What are you going to measure? You're going to measure willingness to pay, right? And that is done with something called value research, which is a kind of online market research. It works equally well for services and products, and equally well for B2C to, you know, to consumer goods or business goods. And just to remind us that prices are optimized on a balance point. And if you ever went to business school, if you ever got any kind of education in economics, you were being taught demand curves looking something like this. Price on the y-axis, demand on the x-axis, and then a straight line. These are complete wrong. They have nothing to do with reality. And they have nothing to do with reality because they're based on assumptions that are completely wrong. They assume that every potential customer has exactly the same problem to solve. And that never happens. That every potential product or service is 100% substitute for every other product or services in a market. That every potential customer is in identical circumstances, and that also never happens. That every potential customer have the same access to funds, and that doesn't happen. And then finally, that we are rational beings. We are not rational beings, right?
Are you mocking me?
I'm sorry?
Are you mocking me?
No, I'm not mocking. I'm mocking myself.
It's all of us.
Yeah. So if you want to look at real demand curves, they are based on models of how we really make decisions. And I've been talking about the 2 most important emotions that we use when we make a purchase decision. One is it's too cheap. One is it's too expensive. And I'm going to show you this as a model to explain a bunch of real demand curves that we're going to see during this presentation. And this is very technical, and it's difficult to understand because it's double negations. But if we start thinking of a price at 0, nobody is not going to buy because it's too expensive. It's 0. But if we, on this particular product, if we increase the price to $500, at $500, every potential buyer will say this is too expensive, so there is no sales. Right? On the other hand, if we start at 0 again, nobody will buy because the price is too low. But if we increase prices in this model up to $250, over $250, all buyers will say, this is a price that gives me confidence that the product or service have adequate quality and benefit. Which means that business will only happen here, right? And $165 happened to be the optimum price point in this particular little model. And this is where the price is low enough to be affordable for clients and high enough to set a expectation of adequate quality. Is this understandable? Mm-hmm. Then we look at the real demand curve. We have, this looks a little different than the model, but we have a price that leads to the highest sales volume. We have lower prices that leads to sets a message of inferior quality, and prices that obviously can be too high. Also lower sales volume. Then we have something called price walls. These are psychological price points where small changes have dramatic impact on the sales volume. And let me give you an example of that. Just before the pandemic, I spent some time with one of the VPs at HP. And HP, the computer company, they have a very simple pricing model. It's just cost plus. But they did an experiment with just one model of computer, and they started to inch up the price, $1 at a time. And they could go up $17 with no change in volume. If they went up $18, sales just fell through the floor, right? So that means that A, they had found the price wall, or one price wall, there are many of them. But it also meant that they had been leaving $17 on the table. And when computers are low margin devices, and when you sell 10,000 a day, it starts to make a difference, right? So, but this could be measured, right? We talked about if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And it's the measurement that is important. But there's more here. You also get revenue. And first of all, in this particular case, we have 2 revenue peaks, which is quite common. And the other is that the price that leads to the highest sales volume and the price that leads to the highest revenue is never the same. And the left peak of revenue have a high sales volume. The right peak has a much lower sales volume, and because revenue is the same, it's a more profitable price. Because cost of goods sold is lower. Now, when you have these curves like this for your product or services, it's easy to set the right price. You either decide that you want to maximize your sales volume at a lower revenue and a lower profit because you want to take advantage of the network effect. Or you maximize your profitability or you set a price that is sort of in between somewhere. That makes sense. On the right side of the price walls. Has any of you experienced price walls? You increased your price and then bang, it dropped.
Yeah.
Tell me.
I mean, we don't have high volume, so there's always the like, why is this? And we work in the utility space, but there's sort of, we have a license price for our software and services. And we're able to inch it up quite a bit a few years ago. And now what we're finding is that's just, we've hit a wall. We can't go back to that price. We dropped it for smaller sales and we can't go back to that price. There's competitors that are much lower. And there's just a belief that we're not as distinguished, like we can't charge that much more. So we're about 3/4 of what we were 4 years ago, and we hit a wall.
Let me tell you a story about a SaaS company.
Okay.
So this is a customer of ours we worked with a few years back. We discovered that they were so underpriced that this is a B2B, by the way. They were so underpriced that they could they could actually quadruple their prices. Now, they didn't do that overnight, but they inched it up over about 9 months' time. And when I checked in with the CEO, he said, after this price increase, there were 2 things that happened. First of all, our sales volume went up 25%. Secondly, we got a new set of customers, and we got rid of the bottom feeders. So our customer support costs have gone down with 80%. Right? Just because your price also decides the customer you get.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Right?
I have a question.
Sure.
We're a service business, we have recurring customers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an hourly rate. And how do you feel about if we like leave our current customers at one price and new customers coming in pay a higher price? Is that any negatives to that? I mean, aside from I'm leaving money on the table, but the fear of losing these guys that I signed is why.
Well, you should, so you have reoccurring revenue, and there's no reason not to increase prices for everybody. You know? And if you want to do what you just mentioned, first of all, do your customers talk to each other? No. Do your old customer goes to the website and see there's a different price? Well, then, I mean, what you should do is to increase prices for everybody, right?
Okay, thank you.
Are you also a SaaS company?
We're care managers, we provide elder care,
Oh, okay.
so it's like one-on-one basis, we're in the homes, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Can't you offer something though to long-term customers or customers who are gonna contract for a longer period of time? Like take some of the current customers and give them a better deal so they can be base load while you increase up?
That's what we've done in the past. Well, we did it we grandfathered them in and said, we'll leave your pricing as is, but new customers are gonna pay this, but then this year we raised the rates for everybody because administratively it was a nightmare and we didn't lose anybody over it.
Exactly then. But you're worried a lot.
Yeah, I'm worried.
I mean, what you say is typical. You know, we raised prices. I worried a lot about raising prices, and we did it, and we didn't lose any customers, right? And I want to tell you another story. This is a SaaS company in the oil and gas industry. We worked with them maybe 12 years ago. We found that they was, again, massively underpriced. So the first price, they had 17,000 customers. The first price increase was 41%. And when we did that with the customer, the CEO got one angry phone call and 2 angry emails, and they didn't lose a single customer.
Oh, Jesus.
The next year we doubled prices. And at that point they lost maybe 24 of their 17,000 customers. This increases in prices gave the company money so they can go out and buy competition. When we worked with them, they were roughly $12 million. When about a year ago, I spoke to one of the board members, and he said, we just sold ourselves for $1.8 billion. Because pricing gave them so much resource, right? Pricing gave them so much resource to grow in a different way.
Per,
Yes.
no, go ahead, Jonathan, then I'll.
In my business, I have 1,500 different SKUs.
Uh-huh.
We price them sort of individually. And we try to increase their year-over-year,
Mhm.
so inflation at least 3%, which is hard. But some SKUs, we feel like we're afraid of hitting the price wall because we have in our mind that getting this item over $10 or this item over $20.
Yeah.
And so we sort of creep into the 1985, 985, and then we sort of like, we feel like I feel like I can't go any past that.
So I have the solution to you a little later in the
Okay,
presentation.
Yeah.
Okay?
My question is a little bit is about price walls as well, which is, in the SaaS example you just gave, increased 41%. Well, you found you didn't hit a price wall. That was a huge price increase. Was
Yes.
it tested, or did the CEO just go all in?
No, it was not tested.
It was not tested.
But we, because we know which value drivers and decision drivers supported higher prices, that was used in the communication. And there was communication to customers in a certain way, just to remind them of the value that this particular company does. We trained their sales and customer support people to support how they should message this and how they should support and answer any angry customers that didn't show up.
Yeah.
So it's a whole, when you do that kind of price increase, there's a whole plethora of stuff you have to do internally.
Therefore, holistic. That's
Yes.
yeah. Got
All
it.
right.
And one more question, you might be mentioning it later, but you referenced, they've got 17,000 customers or whatever. So like, what happens in a business where measuring that is very difficult because you maybe sell low volumes of things? Like, how do you figure out where those price curves are? If you don't have enough volume of data.
Well, first of all, you measure this in the marketplace for products like your product or like your service. It's not about your sales data, because the sales data tells you a little bit about your customers. It doesn't tell you anything about those who didn't buy.
Okay.
And it's those who didn't buy where your growth is going to come from. Right? All right, I'm going to give a couple of examples on how this works in real life. Right? And the first is massage services. Remember, I said early on, look at this, because I don't think anybody here have a massage service business. Look at this and see how can this possibly be applied to your business. So we have the demand and revenue curves here, and we can see that demand is flat between $50 and $80 per hour. We can see that revenues are maximized at 100 per hour, and there's a price wall at 100 as well. And it really means that prices here should be $97 per hour. Then you are close to the maximum revenue and you have a high sales volume, right?
If you have time to do all that.
Well,
I mean, as a massage therapist, there's only so many clients you can see in a day.
well, but you have to use you have to use a service provider. This is not something a company can do themselves. The other is a business SaaS, right? And and here we can see that the demand is peaking at $380. Their revenue is peaking at $800 per year for this business SaaS per user per year. There's a small price pool at $800, and it means that the recommended price would be $795 per year. This is what I'm starting to say, the importance of data. This is the data you need, right? If you had this data for your business, would it make any difference? Right? I've been going for 54 minutes, and should we take a little break?
We can take a break. So it is 10:25, 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah.
Everybody refresh coffee, check your messages, and we'll pick up at 10:30.
Yeah.
Change your company name?
I thought about it. I've been thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I like the interaction.
yeah. Well, this is, again, the potential to maximize profits like this. What was interesting is that in your examples, that the revenue curve, you know, once you went over a certain price, fluctuated, that it would go down, and then if you raise price a little bit more, it would go
up.
back again.
Yeah, exactly. It's about how the price elasticity works in different price levels. You know, I show you that straight line demand curve,
Yeah.
and
So there's an expectation at a certain price level, I'm expecting to pay this much, and then there's the elasticity
yeah,
within
yeah.
that.
But again, those straight lines assumes that elasticity is the same at all price levels, and it's not.
Yeah, yeah.
So. Yes. I took stuff out, maybe a little late.
Can I ask you a quick question? I saw that you put, if the number is 800, you put it at 795. Is
Yes.
that psychological people want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, depending if you sell consumer goods, you wanna end the price on a 7.
7,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Like if I wanted to, I raise my rates in like 5 or 0 chunks, like we're at $250 an hour. If I wanted to go to like $260, I would wanna do $257.
They're probably a price more than 300, and you can probably go all the way to 300, or
If
again.
I was working for you at 300, it would top me out, I would not do it. I would not do it.
But all of that is, you know, could be found out, so. All right, should we start again? Oh,
We've got Bruce.
he lost. Okay.
How can you do market research on sales of stuff when companies are private and their data is not public?
So to feel, there's something called panel companies. And panel companies have databases of people who say, I'm willing to fill in an online questionnaire and make a buck,
Okay.
right? And we have access to approximately 30 million people in the US. And those are individuals, and they need to be very, very tightly qualified, so you know that they are the right people. And there's a way of doing that. But what's difficult to do is if you have to research things like lawyers or doctors and stuff like that. But also that is possible. So. All right, so there's more. What we've looked at so far is the unsegmented demand curves, and we're going to talk about how you then segment it. And you segment it in different ways. So based on various value drivers, based on willingness to pay, on buyer attributes and decision drivers and so forth. And then you get the whole picture, right? And that's how you get pricing power. So again, I'm going to use these examples so you can see how segmentation works. This is for a fractional CFO service. And you can see demand peaking at 500, revenue at, what is this, 5,000. But then when you segment this, right, what happens is that you see that companies, this is segmented by the size of companies that are the customer to the CFO service. You can see that companies with revenue between 6 and 25 million has the highest demand, and larger companies have very low demand, and small companies have also very low demand, right? And when you then look at the same for revenue, you can see that, I mean, obviously you see the same story, right? That you want to focus on these companies that are in the middle size for this CFO service, right? And the price should be 4,000 or 3,000. Actually, it should be 4,000. And I'm going to talk about why it should not end on a 9 or a 7 in a second, right? So you see, this is an example on you take these baseline curves and segment it. This is size of customer. Then we segment again on value drivers, and accuracy in this case is expected, and it's not something people are willing to pay for. What people are willing to pay extra for is to have these financial reviews in plain language, right? That's a strong value driver, right? Industry experience is only important for those companies that are small. And this again goes into that focus marketing and sales on the message of using plain language when promoting this fractional CFO service. This is just one example. Of course, it's a lot more, right? But that's how you turn information into actionable knowledge, right? Is this understood? I'm just going to do a couple of more quick examples, right? This company selling organic coffee, right? Takeaway coffee. What do you get? Well, organic as a message leads to the lowest sales volume for this particular company. Quality leads to a higher sales volume, but the highest sales volume you get for this particular company by having a message, this takeaway coffee tastes better than the coffee I'm making myself. And that, just changing the message, doubled the size of the company, right? Because they had the data, right? B2B example, document management. We can see that low cost, if the cost is low, you know, you want to have a less feature-rich product and so forth. This is by size of company, right? Slightly higher priced for a little larger companies, and the data says that really high-priced products should be sold to very large companies in this case. Well, who's the buyer then? Well, low-cost product appeals to VP levels, right? Department heads are willing to spend much higher prices for this particular service, and so are lawyers. And when we look at industry, we can see that manufacturing is not interested in this service, that retail companies are really interested and are willing to pay really high prices for this particular service, and so are medical companies. So just by segmenting, we can tell this company to generate a family of products with different features, sell to department heads and lawyers, and focus marketing and sales on large retailers, right? So you see, by drilling into the data, you will know better what you know, how to sell and market to gain that pricing power, right?
Per, can you go back to that for a second, just in that example?
Mm-hmm.
With those three, there seemed to be.
You want to go all three?
No. Go to your conclusion, where the segmentation. Yeah, keep going. Keep going to there we go. So, just so that this is clear, so that I understand it. You want distinct products, different features, different benefits. The inconsistency here is you sell to department heads in certain size companies with a certain feature set, particularly in retailers and medical companies. Where's the lawyer fit into this?
Well, the lawyer had the second highest willingness to pay.
Okay, so you're going to market to them as well.
Yeah. Department heads and lawyers in, you know, retailers and medical companies. So it becomes a laser focus for this particular client's sales and marketing. Sell to the people who are willing to pay the most and are willing to buy the most. Right? So just a little, I hope this is not too theoretical, because it's not actually. This is real. But do you understand the value of having the ability to do this? I see a lot of nods. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Now we talk about the uncertain economy, right? A little bit, right? We don't know what's happening. The tariffs on and off all the time. I have no idea what the situation is. They're talking about the potential recession, the stock market bubble, and of course oil crisis. Right? What are you gonna do? Well, I suggest that you don't panic, right? And you don't panic because these changes applies to everybody. Don't overreact, and don't change your prices all the time. What it means, which somebody said here, is that buyers become slow to make decisions, right? But buyers want consistency. They always want consistency. So you can make changes, but not every week or every day, right? And what happens here is that in behavioral economics that I talked about early on in this presentation, it has been proven that we, as we make decisions to buy, whether it's B2B or B2C, we perceive the risk of buying the wrong thing or making the wrong purchase decisions to be 2.25 times as influential as our expected benefit. So we are risk adverse when we come to buying, right? So what you can do is to try to lower that risk barrier, right? Or call it reduce sales friction. And there are things you can do. I'm going to allow you to read this and I keep my mouth shut. Again, you get a copy of this so you don't have to take notes unless you really want to. Now in this changing economy, have you done any of these? Have you changed anything, how to lower sales friction, how to mitigate the risk of buying?
We've started.
Okay, what have you done?
We're taking our product and creating sort of a less cost-intensive version of it, like stripping down some things, and creating a long-term payment plan for that.
That's good.
We started bundling our service department with our construction department so that we give like their first 5-year, we extend the warranty and we do it their first 5-year required inspections, and starting to build a service department on that so that we get the recurring 5 years after that.
Has it worked?
That's a bundling thing, I would think.
Has it worked for both of you?
What's that?
Has it worked?
Yeah, and some of them, it's also made us the preferred contractor in the building, so it's, the building engineers are now having other general contractors that are only allowed to use us, so our price premium goes up a little bit when we work with somebody who's not a standard client.
Very good. Anyone else? Yeah.
We offer a free class so you can come and try it out before you have to sign to become a member.
Try it before you buy. Cool.
Did that work for you?
Yeah, that's worked well. Mostly everybody ends up signing.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about pricing mistakes, and I'm going to go quickly here. Common mistakes is not having insufficient resource for pricing. As I think I sort of messaged here today, is that pricing is not something you do on a whim, you know, a Wednesday afternoon. It's a little bit more complicated if you want to have pricing power. Considering pricing as would it live in a vacuum, it never does. People who price test they see pricing as living in a vacuum, which is what almost all price testing is inconclusive. Or having a pricing strategy that is inconsistent with company positioning, right? We are positioned as a high value provider and we price low, or maybe the opposite, right? Or view the market as homogeneous. Never is. There's always segments. Or try to have the same profit margin across different kind of products. Different kind of products are always valued different by customers, so why should you have the same profit margin? Cost plus, of course, is very common, right? And I know in different industries you have rules of thumb what your markup should be, right? And if we look at how these guys may end up on a demand curve, it's just random. The cost plus is a guaranteed way of leaving money on the table. Right? And I'm going to show you here an example. This company sells speakers for home theaters. They came in, landed at $23.75, and they simply doubled it to $47.50. And as you can see, they're leaving masses of money on the table. Whereas the price should have been $75 for maximum sales volume, or $149 for maximum revenue. Did it work? Yeah, for this small company. We added $3.5 million in pure margin, right? Now the mistake is to hold prices too long, you know. I mean, I hear this every time when I speak to CEOs. We haven't dared to change our prices for the last 5 years, or 9 years, whatever. No, you should change your prices every year or every 6 months, by just a little, and it compounds. Right? Or changing prices that leads to a price war. Nobody wants a price war. Not having a proper process for pricing, or market price that I said there is no, right? There is no market price unless you sell oil or wheat or pork bellies, where the price is actually published. And this one, I'm going to jump this one. But this, I think, is relevant. This company sells network component for industry, and the what you call it, the company has a relevant value proposition for their customers, but what they saw was new lower price. And I spoke to the CEO and said, people are complaining, this is a great product and people are just complaining about how expensive it is. So I said, take away that new low price, which he did. And in follow-up call, he said, people stopped complaining about our high prices. Right? Or in some cases, reduce the service or your product to a point where it doesn't even exist anymore, right? Because you try to keep your costs so low as possible, right? Anyone ever bought the donut that just exists of whole? You're not willing to pay much for that, all right? And then we've all, I guess we've all been through the stormy pricing meetings where nobody have any data and everybody have very strong opinions. Sales want lower prices, marketing want value prices, but they don't know what it is. Finance want higher prices, and eventually whoever has the highest seniority slams his or her fist into the table and said, this is the price. Is that the right price? I doubt it. Guessing is not so good either, right? And all of these mistakes means that you're leaving money on the table, you're not really on target. And in fact, when companies come to my firm, they say, oh, we have this pricing problem. But the fact is that you see the symptoms in pricing. But the disease in the company is in marketing and sales. So you first have to fix the disease to fix the pricing, because pricing doesn't live in a vacuum, right? So, a story I mentioned to Andrew yesterday as an example of this. This company came to us. They have these dispensers for filtered water that you find outside grocery stores and places like that. They came to us and said, we tried to increase our prices 7 years ago, and it backfired badly, so we had to revert. But the research that we did found that if they position themselves differently from a pure marketing standpoint, there were room to increase prices. And this company have roughly 2,000 dispensers, and they have an army of technicians who clean them and check the filters and stuff like that every day. And marketing for a company like that is the signage on the dispenser itself. So during 1 week, they changed all the signage, they increased the price, and during that week, they went from a $200 million to a $240 million company, right? Because they fixed the problem, the disease in marketing, right? So then they didn't have a pricing problem anymore, right? So anybody recognize these mistakes? Anybody done them? Anybody going to stop doing them? Right?
Maybe. Yeah.
All right, so let's change tactics and talk about pricing actions that you can actually do today, right? Not every action, baby, but you can at least pick some of them. This, of course, we know. Pricing is starting on 99. And why is this? Why does this work? Well, it does because when we read this, we read, in this case, 20-something versus 30-something. Because that first digit in our minds are much more important than what happens afterwards, right? And in fact, there's evidence that if you go to pricing like this, you can see a 20% increase in sales. Right? But there are restrictions. Luxury goods should never be priced on the line. And goods or services where you want a message, value, and uniqueness should never be priced on the line. So if you have unique products or services, you should not price them on the line. This is for companies with many SKUs, right? Almost every company have some SKUs that are unique, and you want to identify them. Go through your list of 1,500 SKUs and say, these are unique in some way, right? And put a tag on them. Call them A products or green products or something. It doesn't matter. And then almost every company has some products or services that are complete commodity. You can buy anywhere. And then you have something that is in between. So what you want to make sure you do, you have different pricing strategies for these. So unique products, no discounting, increased price. Commodity products, work relentlessly to take cost out. Because commodity products are sold on low cost alone. And those companies that are in between, think about how you can make them into unique products, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do there too. Then you want to use something called price anchoring. What is price anchoring? Well, to illustrate this, once you've been at the Prada store looking at $4,000 handbags, that $600 wallet at the checkout is a bargain, right? Because your brain is considering the 4,000. That is the anchor point. The most maybe the most extreme and successful price anchoring I've ever seen was when Apple came out with a watch. You had a $349 watch they wanted to sell, but you could also buy the same electronics for $17,000. And all the journalists who wrote about this product launch, they talked about the audacity of Apple to sell the, excuse me, the same electronics for $349 and $17,000. The difference was that the $17,000 one had a case made out of 24 karat gold. It was not there to sell. And I don't think they sold more than a handful, if any. It was there to make the 349 more and more and more affordable. Right?
There used to be an ice cream shop in Napa that sold ice cream, and then on the top of the thing, for $10,000, they would serve you ice cream at like the base camp of Mount Everest. Reminds me of that.
Same thing. McDonald's had these signs, used to have this sign, over 90 billion sold. You know, and it's a number, it sticks in our heads and becomes a little bit of an anchor. Sony was doing the same thing with televisions. So you have a $2,999 TV as an anchor point for the cheaper ones, right? Sony made a mistake here that I just talked about. What is that mistake?
99.
99, yeah. Should have been 13,000 or 15,000 or 21,000, whatever, right? So that's a mistake. We have MailChimp.
Per, just going back to that
Mm-hmm.
example, then they have two with just $1,000 apart
Yep.
at the low end,
Yes.
as opposed to just having one,
100.
yeah, or at, you know, $13.99. Why the, what do you think is going on in those two price points?
Because they're so close to each other.
Yeah.
Just bad pricing practice. I mean, there are probably some technical difference here that may add, you know, $5 to the cost of the TV.
Yeah.
But it's not good, right? But MailChimp is even, I mean, you want to buy this service for $300 or $15? It's the same as Apple, you know? There are some people who always buy the most expensive. They're not many, but there are. But what this tells us is $2.99 and then $15. Because they want to sell a lot more of the $15 version. Now, these two last examples, what did they have in common? Think about the screenshots I showed.
High price on the left.
You're the first one that ever said the right answer.
I was gonna say.
Way to go, Alex! Look at the brain on Alex.
You want to have the right price or the high price to be the first price that the potential buyer sees. That may be the top price. I mean, if it's on the website, maybe the top price, or like this to the left. And there's some other things here, for example. You want to have your dollar sign as small as you possibly can get it, and as vague or as grayish out as, because then this is not money anymore. It's just a number, and that increases willingness to buy a little bit, right? This is good because they have a little bit of explanation what it is before you see the price. There's so many companies, if you go out there, that put the price on the top. It should not be on the top, because that sends a message that use price as your main decision driver. What you want to use is you want to use the features here as the main decision driver. And that means that friction is lower, right? But if I were them, I would have used smaller font for the price as well. Because a big font here tells the buyer, the price is important.
Yeah, they're gonna look there first.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about doing small price adjustments. And this company, it is one company that's had 3 power drills, and they were priced at $90, $95, and $120. And as you can see, the cheapest one is by far the highest seller, right? And then this company made one change. That drill number 2 went up to $111. And if you look at this chart, that changed the dynamic completely.
Wow.
Right? And this is because perception changed, you know. Before they made the change, buyers said, okay, drill 1 and 2 is so close in price that they must be the same. So let's buy the cheapest one and save a couple of bucks.
You
Right.
you just answered my Sony TV question.
Yes.
$13.99, $12.99.
Yeah.
They could have gone up
Yes.
on that $13.99.
Oh, definitely.
Only $100 more.
Yeah, exactly. After this change, drill 2 must be much better. So let's buy that one and not drill 1. And by the way, for only a few dollars more, I can get the best drill number 3. Right? In fact, if you have a situation like this, that middle product or service should be about 2/3 of the way between the lower price and the highest price. Right? And then this company, we can we can assess roughly where these price walls are going to be. We don't know how big they're going to be without measuring, but we can assess the actual price. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's accurate. So this company, top 5 SKUs for this particular IT, they were selling, again, IT stuff, right? So I looked at the 5 top SKUs, and I just said, this is probably where the price walls are. I adjusted prices so to be close to price walls. And then we have the yearly sales of these particular devices. And in 5 minutes, I gave this company about $300,000 in added profits. This is the folly of cost plus that this company were using, right? And it drives me nuts when I see a company selling something at $1,003. Because there is a price wall at $1,000. I don't know how big it is without measuring, but I know there will be one. And they could probably sell a lot more at $999 or $997.
So is this like universal kind of truths as far as, this is completely timely for me, cause I'm overhauling everything right now, and I feel like I don't have enough information. Like, how do you feel confident that you know where your target is? Like,
Well, in this
Just
case, where the price rules are, that's a guess, but it's an educated guess.
would that be an educated guess by just in general experience in this,
Yes.
or in market segments that somebody's familiar with?
It's just general experience.
Okay.
You know, price rules, you know, if you start at low prices at 5, 10, 25, 50, 100, and so forth.
So can you educated guess all of our?
Yeah, that's exactly like.
That'd be great.
If you can give us all that same percentage up, that'd be
So
That's a pretty high ROI.
that is pretty high ROI.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are lots of companies who just, you know, they have their cost in a spreadsheet, and then they have a calculation for your cost plus margin, and you end up with any kind of price.
That's what I do, and it makes me nervous, cause I feel
Yeah.
like I'm leaving money on the table.
You
all
are
over the
leaving,
place.
I can guarantee you are leaving money on the table. All right, then when it comes to seldom bought product or services, you don't have a reference price, right? So if selling canned rattlesnake is in your business, you can charge almost anything for it. Very few people will buy it, but they will buy it at almost any price, right? And then let's talk about discounts. And just to remind us about this particular discounts, where we said, so I did this calculation for a couple of, you know, companies with different resulting EBITDA, right? And how much, so what I have here on the x-axis is discount rate, right? And this is how much you have to increase your sales volume to return to the revenue that you had before discounting based on EBITDA. And if you're a 10% EBITDA company and you discount 5%, your sales volume have to increase 100%, right? If you discount 9%, your sales volume have to go up 900%. If you're in 10% EBITDA company. And if you do 10% EBITDA and 10% discount, you're never gonna, no matter what how much you sell, you're never gonna get profitable. Think about this. Again, when your salespeople say, I just need another 5% discount to close this deal. Or your marketing say, why don't we do a coupon for 30% discount? Right? All right.
Do you think about that differently on, like some of my customers are retail customers, I sell for resale, so other vendors. It's just like, it's a different bucket and you price it accordingly?
Those who resell, they just want lower prices. I mean, that's their business.
Right.
Their business is to screw you on price. And so they can maximize margin. I've been there, done that. So, and that's the tough negotiation you have with any reseller, because they always want more margin. Right? Anyway, stop quarterly discounts.
Per,
Yeah.
question, what about the use of discounts to move inventory, old inventory?
No, old inventory prices should go up,
Why is that?
because the ones that actually need that old inventory, it's probably hard to get. They can't get it from anybody else. They're obviously different. I mean, if you're selling fashion stuff, you want to just get rid of the stuff.
Okay.
But if you're selling something else,
Replacement parts or something
yeah,
like that?
increased prices.
So it depends.
Yeah, it depends.
All
At one point, I worked for a company making computer hard drives, and the entire company's profit came from selling old inventory. You know, the same drive that somebody bought 5 years ago, now it's 10 times the price.
Right.
Yeah. But it's a one-to-one replacement, and I don't have to do recertification and so forth.
Yep.
So.
Okay.
Quarterly, I've been in situations where early April, my customers say, "Don't worry, Per, I buy, but I'll place the order the last week of June, because you're gonna give me a better discount." Right? And yes, leave money on the table.
I just wanna make a point that, and test it. This is in terms of business models that have an installed base of users that need stuff to repair, to replace, to service. So the installed base, depending on the market,
Yeah.
tends to want the convenience and not switching.
Yeah.
So you really have pricing power on the services or the things that you follow up with.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the companies I worked with, we had two, it was not a SaaS, but it was a systems company, it wasn't SaaS, but we had two systems. One was an older one that we were initially spent a lot of money trying to move people off of it to go to the new one, and people really liked the old one, so we just started charging a lot for anything they needed, for any maintenance, for anything, and that was for at least 4 years, it was double the revenue of a new product. Eventually, it shifted, but it took a long time.
Yeah.
And so we made a lot more money on the installed base with that
Yep.
older one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So discounting should not be across the board. You want to use discounting to drive people to more profitable products, right? Because discounting is powerful. It is a powerful way to sell, but it should not be across the board. Right? Or do like Apple, who don't discount, they bundle, right? So instead of giving a discount, you say, okay, I'll get you this instead. I'll get you this in addition. You have maybe lowered your margins, but you have retained your revenue. Right? And then if you look at approval fences, if you have salespeople, a salesperson may be allowed to give away 10%. So a lot of business will come in at 10% discount. The regional manager may be allowed to give up 20%, so a lot of business will end up there, and the VP 30%, so a lot of business will end up there. And you can just move these up. So the salesperson suddenly can just give away 5%. The regional manager 15% and the VP 25%. Right? Will they complain? They will complain. Right? But it's a way of making sure money that is rightfully yours is yours. Then we have the iron law of pricing. And that means that your products or service are being valued differently at different times by different people and by the same people. And I'm jokingly, trying to illustrate this sometimes with assuming that you're on you're on the way to the hospital with a sick child, and you're running low on gas. You'll pay anything for gas, right? On the other hand, when you're on the way to the in-laws, maybe you drive an extra round just to find a particular gas station with cheaper price, or where you have a loyalty card or whatever, right?
Or you couldn't make it.
Couldn't afford gas.
Yeah, but But the example here is, of course, that we know that those sodas at the checkout counter is a lot more expensive. So you pay for those who buy it pay for the convenience, right? It's cold, it's there, you know, and it makes a lot of money. So, do you use any of these? Or can you use any of these and you haven't done yet?
Just real quickly around, I mean, and this might take some thought, but what is striking you as an opportunity? Anything?
For me, the data tracking. So I'm not like an individual product for construction. So, you know, my sale is, you know, 10,000 products and labor mixed together.
Yeah.
What we do is, really the only thing that we do for pricing is we pretty much watch our hit rate. When we're bidding, we wanna hit somewhere between 15 to 13%, and that usually means we're at the top of what we can get away with. If we start hitting 30%, we start raising prices fast, because we know we're getting too cheap. Because our market does change just on demand, construction volume, are competitors busy, or are they starving?
Yeah.
And that drives our price. So our price, we just watch hit rate, but I'm thinking, watching hit rate in each facet of what we do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And right now, we just do it as a whole.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be smart to start focusing on the types of projects we have, where are we hitting well, where are we not, and start getting more specific. And maybe the margin is available in one of the markets. we're not
And you
looking
want
at
to,
strong.
and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but the key to differentiate yourself in ways that leads to a higher willingness to pay, and not, you know, to make you stand out in meaningful ways to competition, so you can charge higher prices.
Yeah.
All right, we talk about price list and how you can eliminate downward pricing pressure. So this example is sticky labels sold to retailers, where they use it to when they, you know, they wrap things about a little box and sell it out. And so this looks like a pretty normal price list, right? Where you have a SKU, you have some size information, you have labels per roll, because this is rolled, and then you have the price. And here the price is even in bold, meaning that, oh, it sends a message, use the price to make your decision, right? That's what it says. And that, of course, leads to downward pricing pressure. This other company, they have product info, they have a value statement, right? And they have more product info, and eventually they have a SKU. They have no price. To get to the price, you have to look it up in an index.
Oh, you don't know what that is?
Now, what happened here is that you make your decision, you look at the SKU, you look at the index, and you make your decision based on your actual needs and the value description.
So you've already made your decision before you go look at the price.
That's right.
So you know what you want.
And the most funny thing here is that these two price lists are from two retailers of the same sticky labels, from the same manufacturer, right? And the latter one is doing really well. The former one, I think they've actually gone out of business. Right.
Sneaky little
All right. Talking more about the importance of having the right value message. And this, I'm using a consumer example, but it's just as relevant in B2B. So assume you're gonna go for lunch, right? And you really want the steak, but you think you can only afford the burger. And that is because it's a steak without value proposition, there's this burger without value proposition. And if you add a value proposition, you suddenly can justify for yourself that you want the steak, right? And if we look at this from these demand point of view, you can see where the sale would be for this particular steak when it's the steak. as opposed to the same steak with a value proposition. Double the sale, right? And it's sort of common sense, right, to have a value proposition, but common sense is not very common, right? It was actually Voltaire that said that back in the 1764. So I went online, I looked at a couple of menus, and where do we have these value propositions for the steaks? This keeps a lot of cows happy because they're still alive, right? There are value propositions for, or at least descriptions for everything else, but not for the steaks. It's crazy, right? So every time you present a price to a customer, you have to use a value proposition, right? And let me tell you a little story here. There's a company based here somewhere called Splunk, or used to be. I think they've been bought by somebody. They are doing something with data. I don't know what they do with data, but they were doing data. And I got a call from them, and they said, we are losing money. They were a $9 billion company at the time. We are losing money. Our investors had told us that they are not going to give us any more money. So we have to raise our prices. And every time we tried to raise our prices, sales just fell, through the floor. So I looked at their website, I looked at the pricing page, and it was one of these long, you scrolled and you scrolled and you scrolled, right? And as I scrolled, there was just messages of, we are dirt cheap. Or there were endorsement from people that said, oh, Splunk is great because they're so cheap. Yada, 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 right? So I told this guy, just remove all this BS about how cheap you are. And you should, by the way, you should remove the price as well from your website. And then I spoke to him 3 months later. And he said, okay, we still have the price on the website, but we took away all that language of how cheap we are. And we doubled our prices. And nobody noticed. And now we're profitable.
That's crazy.
Yeah, right. All right, let's go talk a little bit about the strategy here. I'm running out of time a little bit. But this is more stuff that is more transformable of your company. Require more work than these tactical things. You want to have processes, for cross-sell and upsells. Always somebody buys something. Can you sell something else? Can you sell a larger soda? Upsells and cross-sales are really important things, because when the buyer just bought, their brains are in buying mode. And it's easy to sell something else. But this needs to be planned. If you have salespeople, they need to be trained on it. There may have to be separate SKUs for a bundle of a, like in this case, a drink, fries, and a burger, versus another bundle for only the burger, or another SKU for just the burger, in your businesses, of course, right? Here's an example, you bought shoes, why not get this cleaning kit, right away. We've seen this. Now, of course, Southwest doesn't do these lining up anymore. But I remember when I first saw this on a Southwest flight, and I think it was you want the first seat, or you want to be in these first 15 people. It's only going to be $150. For a flight, that was $150. Because Burbank to San Jose, right? It's crazy. So, and this has to do, go back to behavioral economics. This has to do with, we have different departments or compartments in our brains for pricing. So there's a compartment for ticket price, and there's another compartment for an upsell like this, and we don't add them, right? So I could have bought that $150 upgrade, but I still only had a ticket for $150, right? Product mix. This is actually in Syncerator. This is what they used to buy. This is the frequency of different products at different prices. And they started a program together with retailers to try to move people up to more expensive products. The difference is not that much, but this is also a very low margin product, right? And this is the average prices as they went through this process, right? How do you do that? Well, long delivery on cheap models. You have end caps, you have promotions on more expensive models, but not the cheap ones. You make sure that the expensive ones are in eye height and the cheap ones are down at your feet and so forth, right? Bundling can help you to focus on benefits and so forth. And it can open new markets. Create a bundle. Unbundle is another way of working with your product or services to appeal to more people, right? Or simply to make more money. And I'm going to use Apple again, right? Up until the iPhone 11, it came with a little charger and a cable and some wired headphones, right? And then from 12, they took that away. But there were people who bought it anyway. And in fact, it added about $4.5 billion to those people who bought that used to be bundled.
Plus they changed the cable, so yeah, you had to buy it.
Yeah, you had to buy it, yeah.
Brilliant.
They were forced to do that.
Were they?
It was regulation. Right, yeah.
And they also saved $1.5 billion on cost. So I'm encourage you to look at your product or services. Look how you can bundle. Look how you can unbundle. And these guys, of course, are experts on this, right? And why? Because it works. It does work, and that has to do with these compartments up here. Until, of course, it doesn't work anymore, right? If you sell products, you can add services. If you sell services, you can add products. I was very impressed when I learned about this company, Hilti. They do professional hand tools, electric hand tools. They're based in Liechtenstein, which is a little country just barely larger than Disney World, and is not a low-cost country at all. But they added a slew of services to add to value, to defend their high prices, right? So these are things that are more long-term, but that can transform your company to the next level if executed. So, do you use any of these bundling, unbundling, upsells? You do? Tell me about it.
Yeah, for our birthday parties, there's like a set price, and then there's add-ons that you can do. You know, you can add this many kids, you can add, and that usually always sells because people want to add kids to come to their parties. And then we'll do, you know, face painting, goodie bag, like we'll add different things so that you can stretch how much it'll go.
What you want to do is you should not offer that when they buy the basic service. You should go back and offer it and later on, because then they have, again, compartment in the head. They have a compartment for this is what the service cost, okay? And then you go back to them you know, sometime before the actual event, of course, and you say, oh, I see that you didn't buy face painting, or you didn't buy this, or and maybe there's a couple of more kids that want to come, right? Can we add that to what you bought? Because that happens in another compartment, and people don't add them up.
Yeah, I have noticed that like right before the party, people will start adding on, you know, they bought it 3 months ago, and then
Yep.
right before the party, they,
So you should have a reminder that they can do it.
yeah.
And again, to make a quick airline example, American Airlines 10 or 12 years ago came out with premium economy, you know, same seat, this much more legroom, and a little more expensive price. It didn't work at all, right? So they took it away after 9 months or so. Then a year later, United did the same thing, but you could not buy premium economy when you bought your ticket. You could only upgrade to premium economy when you checked in. Different compartments, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about the pricing process, and this is going to go quick because I'm out of time. But it's just a really standard business process. You know, you go forward and then you have a feedback loop, so you make sure that things actually happen in the way it should do. And you should have a pricing function in your company if you're big enough. If you're not big enough, have a part-timer of some kind, right? And what a pricing function do, again, this is for you to read when you get the copy of the presentation, right? So this is the basic stuff that a pricing person do, right? And there's more here, and there's even more. So, but that pricing function that needs budget authority, and it's something that reports to the CEO, not somebody that reports to marketing or the financial. It reports to the CEO. That's very, very important. So, in summary here, I'm at the summary. I'm only 31 seconds late. All right? Pricing power comes from differentiation. To be different than your competitors in ways that are meaningful to your customers. And in order to do so, you need to understand how the decision landscape and the decision driver and the value drivers all affects what customers are willing to pay. Right? And you can do all these price actions to transform the company, right? To make it take off as a rocket, right? And that is a wrap.
Thank you.
Before we go, Vistage, say this is sort of what we talked about, and I have, these are a couple of worksheets that I forgot to give you out, but this is, you can take them home, look through them, and use them to remind you of what we talked about here. And then Vistage want you to scan that and tell them how good I was.
Do that.
So, all right. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I've
But
got the same.
please take up your phone and do this right away,
Yeah,
otherwise
we
it
can do
doesn't.
this now.
There's not a strategy in making us wait 5 minutes.
Yes, it's the opposite. Yeah.
That's right.
Can I ask you a question while we're doing this?
Of course.
In our business, our clients, most of our clients are utilities, cities, government.
Mm-hmm.
So we are typically responding to an RFP.
Mm-hmm.
And because of where the funds are coming from, right, they're looking for, there's minimum requirements that you have to do.
Yep.
And you're always trying to put add-ons in, right? I mean, there's this, issue about that, but here's the requirements and here's the lowest price. You know, they typically have to have 3 bidders,
Yep.
and they will, and, you know, between 50 and, you know, 100% is based on the lowest price, depending on who the client is.
Mhm.
Where it's, you must meet these qualifications or you're considered a non-responsive bidder.
Mhm.
So you have to do these features. And then within those responsive bidders, we'll narrow it down, and then we're gonna look for the lowest price. There's always some small subjective component, obviously,
Yes.
but it's much smaller than I think it is in a lot of other arenas, at least that's my gut. Can you talk a little bit about how to deal with some of that price differentiation? We're looking at a lot of add-ons, we're looking at modularization so that people can pick and choose. We have bundled, I think, a lot of services in to try to differentiate, and I'm starting to unbundle those
Mhm.
because of the price pressure that's right now, especially in utilities with different rates, situations. So do you have any advice? Because there's a bunch of those things that I did write down that I think are valuable, but there's others that I'm like, I'm not really sure I could, which of course, there's gonna be some I can't completely apply to this situation because of that rating structure and things like that.
Well,
And I am still.
if you,
doing
well, I think in your case, it's very important to craft those RFP responses in
Mhm.
such a way that you can sell change orders,
Mhm.
right? I don't know exactly how to craft them. That's,
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
But craft them so you can see, because typically, you know, you make your profit on the change orders, because then and that's actually something I learned from a guy called Larry Smart, who was my boss at one point. And he'd been responsible for selling nuclear power plants at GE, and he said, you get the deal at any price, right? Because then once this contract is signed, the real negotiation starts.
And that's the way we used to work on, like, I worked for ABB for a lot of years, so I recognized your accent. I spent a lot of time in Sweden, right? In Västerås, Vattenfall was a big client. But you need a big project to be able to deal with that, right? Well enough. And with our size and what the projects we're bidding on, there are a competitor that's clearly doing that.
Yeah.
Is clearly like, put money in there, like, we're just gonna be absolutely the cheapest, and then once you're locked in, we're gonna upsell.
Yep.
I haven't really been willing to do that because of the losses that we would take, and I'm really anti cost plus T&M.
Sure.
Right, because of my experience of leaving that on the table so much, but I'm questioning that a little bit, but so I'm not quite sure how to. I mean, we've built a pricing function recently, we've built a pricing model. We do have cost, but not from a cost plus as a reference point for approvals. We've developed fences for who can approve what. There's a limited number of RFPs that come out, right? There's a limited number of options. So we've been working on trying to figure out how to differentiate ourselves and what the competitors are doing that might be different. But I'm having a really hard time figuring out how to really up the price given that, and maybe the answer is I can't.
The answer is that you probably can't, you certainly can't every time, but maybe you can do it occasionally. And it may be in ways of, you know, if you look at lowering that friction point, you know, try before you buy, or buy a small piece and then upsell the larger and stuff like that.
That helps, because that's what I wrote down and took away from this, is maybe I really got to focus on the friction points.
Yeah. So, all right.
Why don't we take a break, and when we come back, let's say at 1:15, we're gonna just dive in to Alyssa's presentation, and then we can break for lunch.
Okay.
All right? Sounds good.
All right,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta get that up. Oh, something I wanna say to everybody is that if anyone wants, to have some one-on-one follow-up, I'm happy to get on a Zoom call for
Okay.
half an hour and just, you know, there's no obligations,
Yeah.
you know,
No, that would be great,
That's
You know?
terrific.
thank you.
so. And, I have my book there, you can,
Take it back, Per.
yeah.
You gotta sell it now.
You gotta keep it moving, yeah.
And obviously, everything I talked about here today and a lot more is in that book, so,
May I show you something?
sure.
So we price things for large companies,
Mhm.
and so I've always put MOQ like this,
Uh-huh.
and so because I have to give you a price break, but I feel like I have to,
Okay,
then maybe I don't.
maybe you don't.
Yeah. And so this is something that I've been looking at redoing because it's pretty.
Yeah, let me see what you have here, I can't even read. What is MOQ?
MOQ is minimum order quantity.
Oh, okay,
So either they're the 300 or 1,000 or 2,000
Yeah.
price increase.
yes.
Um,
Yeah, that, I mean, that's fine, I think, it's fine to have, multiple. Can't you use this?
Is this yours?
No,
Oh, that's not yours?
no, but do you have
I
a
see.
USB-C?
Yeah.
I mean, the question is the price level correct? And what I also see, there's no value proposition.
I know I add this big time,
Yeah.
so I'm adding that next for sure.
Yeah.
Like we have so much that we can add about the product. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think we maybe increase the pictures and talk about the product more.
Yeah, absolutely, and what you also can do, instead of, you can also add